Good day, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon to some of us from wherever you're joining in every part of the world. And welcome to this interesting, amazing webinar that we'll be having today, discussing e-governance in Africa. And I can assure you, we're going to be having an amazing time. We have an amazing lineup of speakers who will be addressing us today, sharing views, sharing experiences, all in the bid to promote digital governance, inclusive governance across Africa. For those who do not know about Africa e-governance conference initiative, this is a global initiative for Africa with a focus for advancing best practice and excellence in digital transformation, digital governance initiatives in line with the digital transformation strategy of the African Union as articulated in the African Union Agenda 2063. We have several expressions. We have an annual conference, peer review mechanism, amazing initiatives. And this webinar is just one of our ways of enlightening and engaging for better digital governance in Africa. Very shortly, I'll be introducing the Director General of the Africa e-Governance Conference Initiative. His name is Dr. Adeyinka Adeyemi, and he has vast experiences in digital transformation for over 25 years. And it will just be by way of introducing or welcoming us for this webinar before we have our keynotes and our panelists. Dr. Adeyinka, please, you're welcome. Good morning. You have the floor, sir. Okay, while we'll have him come up in a little bit, if you're here, welcome. And I'd just like us to pay attention, take notes, note down any questions that we may have. So at the end of the session, we'll be taking, questions from the audience and having some of our speakers address those questions. So thank you. If Can we have Mr. Adeyinka, Dr. Adeyinka Adeyemi? Sir, you're muted.
Good morning, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be here this morning as the Africa e-Governance Conference Initiative hosts this webinar with focus on governing digital transformation in the public sector. While we dive into inclusive institutional models for sustainable financing for e-governance in Africa. This is another webinar in the series that we have had over the last 2 years, and therefore it's my honor and privilege to welcome you all into this webinar. As we know, the Africa e-Governance Conference Initiative is focused on pushing the frontiers of digital transformation across Africa on the continent, because we believe that the Agenda 2063, the agenda that promotes the Africa we want, can be realized primarily if the continent has the requisite digital infrastructure to allow inclusion, right, with respect to citizens' participation, with respect to economic and social inclusion of our people in Africa. And one of the things in our work on the continent with different governments and different countries is the issue of digital public infrastructure, which obviously requires a lot of funding. The public sector in these countries have different levels of, you know, uh, um, transformation. Some at very appreciable levels, some are just at the start of, you know, that process. But we believe that the public sector needs to be brought into the mainstream of digital transformation, because that really is the starting point if you really want an inclusive government, and if you really do want the, you know, nation states to make progress in line with the Agenda 2063. However, like I said earlier, one of the key success factors that will determine how far any country on the continent
Dr. Adeyinka, we lost you there. We cannot see you. We cannot hear you. Okay, everyone. We'll work to try to fix that in a minute. So while we try to fix that, let me just say that when we hear the concept of digital governance, I know it may sound vague to many people, but I mean, it's something we just, the world is drifting towards artificial intelligence. Okay, we have Dr. Adeyinka, so let me put myself right there.
Um, just go back.
Right. Apologies for that break in transmission. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, we can. Please go ahead.
Excellent. Excellent. Right. So before that break, and apologies for that, I was just alluding to the fact that we need digital infrastructure for the continent to thrive with respect to digital transformation. We also need the public sector to take the lead when it comes to that, you know, roadmap. Uh, However, the critical success factor is how do we finance digital public infrastructure on the continent? And that really is the focus of this webinar, governing digital transformation in the public sector, inclusive institutional models for sustainable financing for e-governance in Africa. We have therefore put together a very wholesome team of experts on the panel to take us through this very interesting topic from different dimensions in terms of their walks of life, their experiences in their in their area of calling, and how they have all contributed in terms of value creation in this area that we're discussing this morning. So, once again, you're welcome. I think I can end my opening remark here and just wish you all very good deliberations, and to thank our speakers also that are on the panel this morning for making time of their very busy schedules to attend this webinar. Thank you very much. Happy deliberations.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adeyinka Adeyemi, Director General at Africa eGovernance Conference Initiative. So, yes, you've heard it from him, and like he said, we have amazing speakers that will be giving us different perspectives of the theme. And I have not introduced the theme of this conference, but I'm sure we have seen it. But it says governing digital transformation in the public sector. We'll be addressing inclusive institutional models for sustainable financing for e-governance in Africa. Okay, thank you very much. So without much ado, I'll be introducing our first speaker, and that is Mr. Walid Amdi. Mr. Walid Amdi is a prominent technology and digital transformation expert. He's a thought leader in leveraging technology for socioeconomic development across Africa. He has held several high-level roles, even one recently in the African Union, where he led initiatives with the aim to transform African societies through strategic use of information technology, information and communication technologies. I mean, his works are diverse in digital services, policy development, strategic planning, partnerships. I mean, I'm excited really to just dive into this session. Mr. Walid Amdi, it's an honor to have you here. I'd like to hand the floor over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my dear sister, for the introduction and for Dr. Dienka for his opening remarks. Allow me to share my screen before I address the audience. Just to check if everyone can see. Is it visual? Can you see my screen? Yeah, I hope so. So very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon for those who are joining us today from different time zones. It's really an exciting opportunity, and I thank the organizer for inviting me, for having me today, as much as also an exciting and important topic that we are presenting today. So I think the main thing that we are here to talk about is to talk about how we can pay about our inclusive digital future as Africans. Very quickly, for those who are seeing me for the first time, and I think my sister, she put a very comprehensive introduction. Just very quickly, I have worked on a continental level on many digital strategies. The one that I'm most proud about is the African AI strategy. I have directed core digital infrastructure projects, national ID, government cloud, data exchange, and payment platform for government. And I am certified in tech diplomacy, where I use this to engage with ministerial and C-suite stakeholders, aligning national and continental digital agendas with the global standards. And my experience extends over 15 plus years, transforming high-level digital agendas into implemented large-scale projects. Feel free to scan my LinkedIn profile, and I'm happy to connect with everyone. So without further ado, let's dive in our talk today. So before we talk about the e-governance, before we kind of like go to the specific topic of today, we just wanted to touch on what are we going to talk about today. So the main thing we are trying to put it in the core of our discussion is the inclusive governance and the sustainable financing. Just to make it very simple, very clear. Maybe we don't want to confuse the audience, so those are the things that we are focusing on. The e-governance is important, but my strategy always is to have the big, complete picture and then focus on the zoom in the e-governance, because we want to understand what's the digital transformation. So the digital transformation is not just signing contract with tech vendors or buying softwares or kind of like having an ERP system in place. Digital transformation is to shift our mindset for everything to be digitally designed. And this, I always have been saying this in every talk, in Africa especially, we have challenges. We know our limitation, but definitely this is my own opinion, is that across the road of these challenges, there is a lot of opportunities waiting for us in Africa. So digital transformation holds immense promise for Africa. It can help us grow our economies. It can help us improve our public services, delivery to our citizen, and also it would help. It could be the very big driver to integrate us, to bring us together. So unfortunately, we have this stark paradox. While we think about digital transformation, we are very good, we are expert at piloting or starting piloting projects, and we say that, well, we need to shift, we need to start, people are moving, we need to onboard this digital transformation journey. However, our citizens, they feel that, well, yes, we compare government services with other sectors like banking, for example, and we can see that, these private sectors services are really good, and we wish to have our government services also digitized and at the tip of our finger. So there is a demand from the citizen to have the public sector services digitized, and while still there is this big demand, the sustainability and the funding of the infrastructure and the governance model, it's still remain our main challenges. So that's the big picture I'm trying to paint for our audience today. And really, it's kind of like, I don't want to say that all the 55 member states are looking from the same perspective. I think Dr. Adienka mentioned that we have different maturity across our 55 member states in Africa. However, these still are the main problems when we look across the continent. We have very, let's say, scattered pilot projects, building DPI, building digital ID systems, and yet there is a success stories, and also there is some kind of like learning curves in the continent. And the core problem is folding into two: the financing and the governance. And I believe the financing piece of it is that we always kind of like identify the problem, identify the right, let's say, development partner, and then ending up having scattered funding, and sometimes we depend on the budget from the government department, and we don't have a very clear operational and funding model that is overarching everything. And of course, the governance, this is very famous, that we have work in silos, not weak, and sometimes not at all departmental coordination, and that's kind of like also affect the digital leadership. So the result, we are having the duplication of effort, wasted resources, and of course sometimes we fail to scale these initiatives. So very quickly, we need to understand the need. So for those who are joining us today, maybe that they don't have kind of like background in e-governance, or maybe just to refresh our mind, to remind ourselves. So e-governance is not an IT project. We cannot, as I said, we cannot buy an ERP system and we just call it an e-governance and call it digital transformation. So it's a public service, a public sector transformation tool. Why we need it? What's the benefit? Why are we here today to talk about this? Because it's enhanced transparency, reduce corruption. If we have a problem of corruption that we know about it, we need to be bold as a government. We need to address it. We need to say that, yes, we have this problem, and we know that corruption is dragging nations from developing. And it's improved the service delivery, citizen satisfaction. Citizens don't have to travel 2 hours, 3 hours, and they don't have to consume petrol. They don't have to go physically to get a certificate or to get a document. They can get it online, and that will increase the citizen satisfaction. Of course, the economical growth, also, we all know about that, the digital inclusion, and the ease of doing business, which itself is a kind of like an index to measure the nation's development. And of course, the operational efficiency and cost reduction. And this is very important. We talk about it in later stage. So let's look at the current models, analyze it, and let's talk about what a new framework would look like. Very quickly. So the first model is, those are the kind of like the typical one, the one that we are having, and the famous one that we are all aware about. So the budget allocation from the government, it's a sole source. The government will come, the Ministry of ICT most probably will kind of like allocate budget. And this is good because the government will have the full control of these services and the features that they have. It's easily, because they are funding their project, it will be easily aligned to the public mission of the department, of the government department. But the problem is, we all know that people who work in the government, we know that when the government change, the fair thing we feel is the shift in the politics and of course the priorities. And also the other thing, it's limited in terms of scalability, because this budget is very limited and it's difficult to scale it. This is based on how governments operate. The second one is the donor and the development partner grant, which is good because it's kind of like seed funding for the initiative. If we are trying to build services, payment service, or data exchange, digital ID, it can start it for us. Normally, this kind of funding will bring knowledge transfer from the development partners, because they have done it elsewhere. So it will be faster to kind of like transfer this knowledge. Problem is, it creates dependency on this partner, and of course, it's not always it's always kind of like not aligned with the long-term national priorities, because it requires a lot of alteration. The PPP model, which is the famous one, so accessing to private capital and expertise is the pros for this model. And of course, it's expedite building these services, building this infrastructure. But again, it kind of like require a very complex contract to reach between 2 parties or 3 parties to an agreement. And also, because of the private sector perspective, we're having a risk of turning these services into profit generating services, which is not the case in the public service. And I'm not saying that those models are not good or are coming with a lot of limitation, because the PPP model is very successful in the Republic of Rwanda, for example. The Ministry of ICT is orchestrating the policies, the direction, the national ICT strategy, while the private sector is heavily involved in building. So the conclusion here is there is no one single model is sufficient. We cannot depend on a model and say that, well, we're going to do fine, we're going to have our inclusive digital services funded. So we might strategically need to blend some of these models together to achieve our goals. So to have a sustainable e-governance finance, we need to be aware that we need to build this model on 4 pillars. diversification, value centricity, institutionalizations, and affordability and equity. So, as I said, we need to mitigate the risk of having one source of funding. We need to be very innovative of calling all the stakeholders, understanding the service, understanding how we can not just depend on one source. And to make it also sustainable, we need to create this link between the funding and the value created for citizens, for the businesses that were using the services, and for the government itself, because governments also need to kind of like understand. Normally, government are not just one institute or just one department. It's multiple, let's say, entities. So this link can expedite and can make it easy to justify the funding or to justify the financing. So this is leading us to institutionalization of these costs into the government functioning and budget. It's not something that nice to have. We need to look at it as a very big commitment in the government budget. Affordability and equity of accessing these services is also a very important pillar because, and I don't want to talk about the device affordability, for example, this is another topic, but we need to make sure that we don't make the digital divide wider. We also need to make sure that people in the city, as well as people in rural villages, have the same amount of accessibility to these affordable services that the government have. So let's now kind of like touch, I hope I'm not running out of time, very quickly, touch on the models for the sustainable financing, which is the first one here is this user-centric models, which direct monetization. And again, let me be very clear. We are not trying to make profit out of this, as I mentioned earlier, but we are trying to kind of like charge the user, charge the end user, the citizen, for this service. And it's a small fees usually, like the birth certification, renewal of driving license permits, which actually we are doing even offline. We pay a fees for this. There is a next level, which is subscription models, and this normally is for businesses, businesses that requiring some data, API access for insurance purposes, for banking. There is some kind of like government-generated data that can be acquired by calling APIs, and this can be availing by having it as a subscription packet. Also, we can have like the tiered services. So the basic services, for example, in the Ministry of Justice can have a basic service saying that, do you have any violation or any court hearing? Yes or no, that's a basic. So it's free, but if I want a detailed criminal record or something like that, then it can be also a paid service. So when this model is the best is for high value transactional services used by businesses, as we said. And of course, the risk is we need to be very careful not to make it very high, and that will exclude, let's say, the vulnerable population or people who can't afford to pay. So we need to cater for this. The second model is the government efficiency models, where it's nowadays, it's a trend. If we look at the global trend, now government around the globe, not only in Africa, they're trying to cut costs and they're trying to introduce cost saving. So from the cost saving perspective, because we can also spend a lot of money on the physical paperwork and processing, and that's could be eliminated, or we can have a cost saving by introducing digital ID, introducing payment system, introducing data exchange. You don't have to take the physical document to go to another government department. The data exchange, which is one of the DPI, can cut this cost. And this saved budget can be transformed, can be relocated to the operation of these public services. And of course, this model can help justifying initial investment, because it will show the decision maker that we are saving this amount of money by introducing the data exchange platform. So it will be easy to justify having the system in place, and also securing long-term budgetary commitment, because, as I said, we are going to relocate our our budget that we saved to the operation of these systems. And the third model, it's all about the value capture and the public-private models, which is a very famous one. And actually, as I mentioned, in Rwanda, I'm sure there is a lot of successful stories about this kind of like partnership. But here we kind of like try to leverage the public assets and private partnership. How? We can have the API monetization, as I mentioned, and this will help kind of like generate kind of like finance to this. But we need to be very careful, because we need to have this data, like land records, company registries, available, not just because it's helping us fund and have a sustainable financing, but it's also this is used to build innovative services, to kind of like make more services available, more feature for the services available. So it's very crucial. And the build operate transfer BOT is again very famous in a lot of countries, and the sustainability comes from that we handle the whole infrastructure, the whole building of the services to the private sector. They build it, they operate it for some times, and then they hand over to the government. Data as a public asset is also, again, one of the mechanisms of having this model, but it's still kind of like a new kind of like a mechanism that theoretical, which is exploring models where anonymized and aggregated data is used for public good, with safeguards, of course, because we don't want to violate any data privacy. But again, government nowadays, they should kind of like have the data as one of the public assets that we can use in different scenarios. The fourth one, I think it's now where we kind of like try to think out of the box, become more innovative, and also tap on the emerging finance models, which exploring new frontiers in public finance. And this one of the mechanisms is to bond these initiatives to social impact. So that's clearly going to gain traction, because it's directly related to social impact. And of course, when we talk about the green bonds for digital infrastructure, it's kind of like pushing towards the energy efficient data centers as DPIs, and also the whole digital system to be aligned with the global goals like the SDGs. And we have the blended finance, which is developing grants to de-risk the project. And after that, when we are in a phase that we prove our concept, we can then have larger commercial investment from other parties. Let me just very quickly share the key recommendation and conclude. So we need to shift the mindset to frame the e-governance as a critical public utility. It's not a cost center. It's not nice to have. It's a critical public utility. And the second recommendation is to start with the value proposition. Who benefits? Like I said, if it's government to government services, then government need to put some kind of like financing. If it's government to citizen, if it's government to private sector. So we need to understand, because that will dictate who should pay, who should be involved in financing this. So also, no one size fit all. We need to embrace hybrid models sometimes to avoid that we just rely on a single source. And we need to build very strong business cases so that we need to put in mind in the very early stages the cost benefit and the return of investment analysis. And of course, we need to prioritize governance. So we need to understand who will do what, who is responsible of what. So a strong governance models, as I said, identifying the stakeholders, it can help have a strong oversight, and of course, managing funds and the private PPP, public-private partnerships, so we can utilize these funds. So the final insight I want to conclude my presentation is sustainable finance is the bedrock upon, of course, which transformative, trusted, and enduring digital government is built. So we need to shift from not necessarily focus on one way of financing. We need to have hybrid, we need to have blended models, we need to understand who is benefiting, so we can have the value proposition very clear. I will stop here. Thank you so much, and I will hand back the floor to my sisters. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Mr. Walid. I was having questions popping up in my mind, and I was taking them down as you were going along. And some of the times you have already answered some of my questions. So, and then we have questions from the audience, but I wouldn't like us to take questions at this time. I would like us to have other speakers speak, and then we take questions all together, so we don't have too much of a disruption. But thank you so much. I feel like an expert on digital finance already. Thank you, sir. Like I said before, it's such an honor to have you on this session. So we'll be moving on to have our next speaker. I'll be introducing our next speaker shortly. I wish we could have, emojis from the audience to just see that, oh, you're having a good time. I'm having a good time. Digital governance policy with the right people, with the right conversations. It's not boring. It's a conversation we need to have, and we're having it right now, and we'll continue to do. So our next speaker is Adia Mahe Wali. She's a public policy and research expert, currently with Media Communication Systems. She has over 13 experiences, over 13 years of experience spanning a global professional career. She has established herself as a leading independent consultant in gender policy, intersectionality, international development, and more recently in digital transformation. I mean, if I were to read our whole profile, I think we might have reached the end of our session. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome Adia Mali to the stage.
Thank you so much, Iwante. And thank you for such an intro. I really appreciate you. And thanks for the invitation. I'm so glad that to receive the invitation from you and from Dr. Adeyinke. Yes, my name is Hadir, and I'm talking to you today from Egypt. And I am the public policy expert with Mideast Communication System, which is a cybersecurity company. But I also have I don't work just on the public policy and research, but I also make sure that the public policy and research and all the data is being well connected with the implementation of these policies in the continent. It's actually very hard to go after Dr. Walid and to follow his steps, and especially with a great presentation. But I will try, and I will be short in my talking points, and I'm very happy to complete the discussion with all the questions that the audience might have. I don't think that if I have to give an intro on digital transformation is needed. However, I'm just going to be very brief in mentioning some numbers that I think that is important, because from where I sit and from the work that I've been doing, it's very, very clear that Africa is in no short of policies around digital transformation. And we have a lot of experiments, we have a lot of policies, we have a lot of data, and we have even very, very strong key stakeholders in this sector. But I agree with Dr. Walid in what he said, that the problem is with our institutions and, of course, the financing systems. And coming from a from a private sector background, I think it's very important to see how the private sector play with the rest of the regional stakeholders in making sure that the digital transformation is progressing. Unfortunately, till now, we still have 550 million people still offline. We still have the third of the public services available across the continent is not actually working effectively end to end. So the question is, can we digitize? Still can, we can. But what is needed? We want to make sure that how the governance of that is sustainable and how we can finance it beyond the life cycle of donor projects. One of the things that it's very, very important as well is to have to break down all the digital initiatives. So across the continent, and again through the work, I'm very, very blessed to be working with a lot of very effective institutions that it's just need to know who needs to talk with who and what kind of implementation strategy needs to take place. And unfortunately, sometimes all these that the effectiveness of some institutions is being jeopardized by the silos, that certain countries are not working together, certain even some of those stakeholders don't even know that some of these regional stakeholders are on the continent and do have the capabilities to either finance or either work on the implementation. So, sorry. So I think more than, if there's one thing I want to say from this is that the digital transformation gap in Africa is not because of the technology, but because of how fragmented the institutions are. And if we want to talk about how the implementation would look like in practice, or at least how working within the continent now, how it's looking like, we want to make sure that there is a central body that is working on these initiatives. We want to make sure that there is permanent digital units in every ministry, in every public sector, in every African country. And we need also to make sure that there is an architecture and the system within those enterprises, like a clear map of what we're building, why we're building it, and how it connects. I actually will spend more time talking about the financing, and I really appreciate what Dr. Walid again has said. And I'm just going to take one of the main modules, which is the public-private partnership, and talk about how this can be how this takes place, especially in an intra-African scheme. One of the things that we work now is, as MCS, is making sure that we work with African countries. So, and we don't make, like, we make sure that the systems are intra-African and within, and also continental. So how do we do that? We make sure that that first, the reality is that making sure that the data centers, the cloud infrastructure, or any fiber networks is very, very capital intensive. Like it's very expensive. And governments end up paying for land, paying for electricity, paying for a lot of redundancy fees, and the whole stack of those equipment, right? So if one African state take this all alone, it carries 100% of the upfront cost. With PPPs, public-private partnerships, especially when the partners are African, whether African telecom operators, whether African cloud providers, or regional digital firms, the private sector takes on most of that heavy capital expenditure, the CapEx. And governments don't need to spend everything upfront. So they can pay gradually through service fees or revenue sharing arrangements. And it's a shift from going big capital spending to predictable operating spending. That alone lowers the initial financial burden dramatically. And we have been working with a lot of governments, and this has been working very effectively in terms of stepping in and making sure that the fund is not just heavy on the government or the ministry alone, but there are other stakeholders within the continent that can come in and step in and work together. Second thing is scale. If those African firms and the infrastructure companies already have the fiber routes, right? So the fiber routes are there, it cross borders, it's working, but they already run the data centers in multiple countries. And there is procurement deals for hardware. And when the government partner with these existing African players, they're not just starting from scratch, because already the infrastructure or the main elements of the infrastructure is there. So you're basically plugging into the infrastructure that already exists. So that even encourages a lot of the private sector to step in and put a lot of investment into that projects. That shared infrastructure can already reduce cost as per our data from 25 to 35%, which is huge. Related to that as well, the private companies buy equipment in bulk every single year, and they buy across multiple African markets. The prices are significantly lower than what a government would get if it procured once every 5 or 7 years. So that alone creates 10 to 15% of savings. And it's simply because African operators have market power and they have market volume. What about time? Time is very important as well if we're making these partnerships happen, right? And with time, with every delay in a government infrastructure, we do have the project adds cost, and most of us have seen like multi-year overruns. Private operators, fortunately, they move faster in that area. So they don't go through these lengthy state procurement cycles. They already have contractors on standby. They face penalties if they miss deadlines, which is like good which is something that they take care of like during due diligence. Just as speed can reduce total cost again from 15 to 20%. And I think it's also very important to have PPPs because it helps with the if the government run, for instance, if there's a government run data center, if anything happened with that data center, or it overruns its budget or suffers any downtime, the state eats the loss alone. In a PPP, especially one with intra-African structure, those risks are shared or transferred. So there are uptime guarantees, performance clauses, penalty mechanisms, and even clearer accountability. I hope that makes sense in terms of like how the PPP works and why it's a very good, not just it's not just for a short win or short-term win, but it's very important to have it as a sustainable model of financing and to tap onto these private sector who want to have business happening in Africa, but they don't know who they should be talking to and who they should be even addressing, and what kind of cost is being done. One of the things that I also feel the problem is with digital governance in Africa is the problem of inclusion, unfortunately. I also have yes, I agree, Valence, yes. One of the things that, as Iwande said, that I have experience working in international development. So it's also very important always within my analysis of the digital transformation progress in the continent to look at certain dimension that might be overseen or missed. And unfortunately, inclusion is a very, very big part of this, or one of the biggest challenges actually in the digital transformation governance. And not just inclusion within the lens of women, but also the lens of the inter-regional inclusion, like making sure that there are African countries are on the table when we are talking about these public-private partnerships. I think it's very important to look at the numbers in terms of encouraging the inclusion. I honestly feel like I want to talk more about this, but I know I'm very limited with time. But again, I just want to emphasize that it's not just about women; it's also about the inter-regional cooperation and how the digital skills and the digital data is there and the infrastructure is there. It's just a matter of, again, transferring the right data within the right hands so that the right decisions can be taken. My final thing to say, and again, I'm very, very happy to have this conversation, more like answers and questions. That's why I didn't want to like have a slide, because I would really, really care that we have a strategic recommendation and to build up on after this webinar. And again, I just want to say that we already have evidence that regional approaches do work. I mean, we're also like very happy to have AfreGov, like one of our partners in the Future of Digital Countries, and having an Egyptian-Nigerian partnership on digital transformation and on e-governance is something that is very important. And through the AfreGov, it's very important to show that these kind of partnerships actually work. Again, like there's the cross-borders collaborations is not only enhanced by the PPP. Again, as I said at the beginning, we have enough policies, we have enough frameworks, we have enough data that allow us to work together. We have the AfSEFTA, which is, I think, one of the most important and most effective policy that has been done in the continent for like the past 50, 60 years. Having AfSEFTA now being enhanced by a digital trade protocol. So AfSEFTA is like the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, and under it there is a guided trade initiative. The guided trade initiative is what makes sure that the continental frameworks are working together and so that AfCFTA is not just a policy. And even below that, and only last year, they issued the Digital Trade Protocol. And Digital Trade Protocol is all about how African governments and African stakeholders can work together in enhancing the digital infrastructure, because it is very important now with all the resources and all the skills that Africans do have. It's very important to make sure that we're ready for the next step. Yeah, I think I would stop here. But thank you for having me, and I'm very excited to be speaking more with all the panelists and the audience.
Thank you so much, Adia. I mean, really appreciate you honoring our invitation. I know you're busy planning a summit in I'll say a few days, but thank you for taking the time out to put this together. I mean, when Walid Amdi spoke, I said I felt like an expert in digital finance. But right now, I think I've just done a PhD in PPP. So thank you so much for
Thank
the
you.
insightful conversation. And I like the proactiveness. I like the zeal to kick into action. I mean, you already mentioned Egyptian Nigerian partnership being facilitated. And that was one of the questions that I had from the beginning of this session, and I still have. But I have promised that we don't take questions until the end of the session. So I'll still hold on to that. I'll now quickly introduce our next speaker. Lord help me with pronouncing the name. I'll do my best. Mr. Omaro Balarabe. I won't give you the second try. No. He's a value chain, and sustainable agricultural expert with CIRAD, which is the Agricultural Research for Development. He's been working in an international corporation. He's an expert in agricultural research, like I said. Has his doctorate from the University of the Chang. He has worked as an executive of Sode Cotton. Um, I think I would let him do more of the introductions. Moving forward, Mr. Omaro Balarabe, it's an honor to have you. I'm not certain if you're speaking to us from France or from Cameroon, uh, but I'll let you have.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah, I'm rather speaking from Benin.
Okay. Thank you. You have the floor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Let me try to. Yeah, that's not it. Okay. Sorry in advance for my English. I'm rather francophone. Just a minute. Oh, that's not. It's okay. Brother, what's going on?
Sir, is there a challenge sharing your slides?
Yeah, it's okay. I'm importing it.
Okay.
It will rather be a very short presentation. Just some few seconds. I'm sorry about that. Let me present myself. As you said, I'm a value chain economist, both an agronomist and economist. Do you have it? Do you have my presentation? Not yet. Okay.
We have it now.
Okay. So, and I choose to speak about tools and perspective for sustainable development in relation with e-governance in agricultural sector. Yeah. And my presentation will speak about gaps, institutional factors, and financing factors within e-governance in agriculture. Let me start about how to justify the need for digital governments within agriculture. Agriculture is about concerns about, here we say 50%, but within certain countries it's above 70% of the population. And there is a need for transparency, efficiency, productivity, and several other things like resilience. And digital governments is the only tool able to improve service delivery and to modernize value chain coordination with things like subsidy management, extension delivery, and market linkage. So we really need digital governments within agriculture. And which are the gaps related to African agriculture in accordance with e-governments in Africa and maybe in several other institutions in the world? There are fragmented institutional architecture with ministries, agencies, cooperatives, private actors, and they are not fully in interrelations. They are not coordinated sufficiently, and this is one of the first gaps. In addition, we can talk about weak data governance. Sometimes we may not have data, or we may have low quality data and non-interoperable data sets. The third main gap related to African agriculture is the dependence with the donors. We have so limited sustainable financing. I mean, by sustainable financing, we mean own finance, own fundings, own tools of improving resources. And the last gap is related to limited integration between the farmer himself, his identity, and the whole data around him. I mean, production records, a framework of production capacities and everything. So in relation with these four gaps, e-governance may provide solution and improve agricultural productivity and efficiency. Now let's think about which value added e-governance is able to bring within agricultural sector. First of all, we can talk about integration in data governance. By integration in data governance, I mean digital farmer registries. Each farmer is supposed to have his own identity so that he is able to be joined within a framework of alerts to tell him whether it will rain or not, whether there will be a constraint or not. So this is about data governance. It may concern also not only the farmer, but also land and parcel information systems. Every farmer does not need to get technical information about his plots, about fertility, about the needs of urea and potassium and everything. And this may be within a coordinated platform. And there's also the need of integrated data according to input distribution tracking. Who needs what? And according to distribution, to the distribution panel, who got what as input and other fertilizers. The second strategic value added related to e-governance is transparency and accountability with, let's say, like management of subsidies, traceability of the systems, and here e-governance can bring more like transparency and efficiency in attaining each farmer according to his needs. The third value added is about efficiency and cost reduction. Actually, we need a very huge logistic for agricultural extension. Using e-extension may change everything. You don't need to go to the field, like say every week. We may not need several field agents to go and discuss with the farmers, and several decisions, several support tools, and digital payments may also be used to achieve some other results. To pay for, let's say, for an agricultural product, you don't need to go to the field, but you may just need to know, you may just need to draft a contract and make the payment to the cooperative, who will be in charge of controlling the product before paying the farmer. So that's the 4 value added. The last value added is about market integration. As you know, in Africa, we don't have a single market according to each product. You may have, like, within the same region, you may have 5 different markets, 5 different local markets, just because the different markets, the different villages are not interconnected because of lack of road infrastructure. So just with e-governance, you can integrate those markets, even if there is no road to go there. So a farmer in village A is in touch with another farmer in village B and knows how much they sell the maize there, and he can fix more efficiently his own maize price in his own village. So the whole market is integrated. So that's about value added of e-governance, of governance in agriculture. Let's now talk about institutional models for agricultural e-governance. There's 3 different cases. The first case is what we are used to in Africa, with a very strong and centralized government architecture. But within this model, you have a lead Ministry of Agriculture, with or without a National Digital Transformation Agency. But this lead Ministry of Agriculture will be in charge of the whole coordination, with a very strong regulatory framework provided by the lead Ministry of Agriculture. The second model is mostly concerning the centralized multi-actor ecosystem, with strong farmer organizations, strong cooperatives, and agribusiness farms integrated through national protocols. Within this model, you may have another institutional model which can take into account the different institutions. The third model is what concerns of and what have been presented by Walid and Mahar. It's about PPP platform-based, with a central private actor organizing things around him with the support of the ministry. So here we have government set standards. So the Ministry of Agriculture is rather providing sets of standards. Private sector is rather providing scalable digital infrastructure, which may be paid or not by the users. And then there is co-investment through blended finance. So this is the third model within Model 1 and Model 2. That's about institutional models, and it's so important to note about these 3 models. Now we can talk, according to what have been presented, we can talk about public-private partnership and other financing models within e-governance in sustainable digital agriculture. Firstly, the public-private partnership is a kind of co-development of digital platforms. So with both funding from public institutions and private institutions, and providing service-based models where government pays for usage. Government here is paying for the usage, but private partners, private actors are providing for infrastructures. The The second option is concerning blended financing architecture with sovereign funding and climate funds, like example, climate funds to support climate smart digital tools. So this is kind of specific model according to specific problems. And the third one is data as a service models, where you can have private firms providing data for the market and contributing to system financing by paying with users paying for it. The last institution, the last models of financing e-governance within agricultural sector is by coordinating it with, how do you call it in English, with regional economic commissions like ECOWAS or CEMAC in Central Africa. They can provide harmonized data standards and provide funding for them. This is what we call regional economic commissions, and specific, or let's say individual contribution to this fund may be provided by each country, so that it's a kind of joint financing windows for digital agriculture. This may be one very efficient way of financing the models without any partner, any national partner providing so much funds for his own local environment, but with mutualizing resources at a regional level. Let's talk now about tools and innovation transforming agriculture in relation with e-governance. First tool is farmer digital IDs and registers. Happily we can say that most of the countries are evaluating through this path with informing for each farmer a digital ID. This is necessary if you want to formalize what you call credit input platform. You will need it. If you want to formalize what you call input platform, you will need these farmer digital IDs and registries. And an example is Nigerian e-wallet to provide inputs within local councils. The second tool is digital extension platforms. Just like something very simple with how do you say it, local partners platforms, you can provide a very strong support to the farmers, providing technical informations on how to acquire credits, how to practice, how to do some specific practice, like if you want to provide inputs, how to do it, what is the new fertilizer formula, how to use it, when to do each operation, and you can do all of these within a single extension platforms. This is it, and it will provide so much efficiency to the system, to the model. The third tool is smart subsidy management. This has been developed in the environment of insecurity. Now you can't go to let's say kind of 5 to 10 village and provide money. Everybody will be aware of the fact that there are some farmers that have money, and within this insecure environment, it's been a kind of people are not using it, government are not using it, but you can just provide what every farmer needs without being there. So nobody will notice that farmer A received some money, and though the bandits also will not be aware of that. And the fourth very strong and efficient tool is the digital market platforms, and I already talked about it. It's just linking local village markets, linking them with each other, so that prices will be shared, information on the prices will be shared with each other, and information on the local production will be known, so that the market will be more efficient because of a better information availability. The last tool concerns remote sensing and IoT with technical technical facilitation like monitoring irrigation, soil moisture, and other yield forecasting. Let me just present you a few examples concerning e-governance in agriculture. The first case is about Nigerian e-wallet used to distribute input subsidies in Nigeria, which can, in fact, reach millions of farmers, reduce the leakage and, as we call it in economy, transactions cost, and based on PPP backbone via mobile operators. Okay. This is the first case, and wherever you go, they will always talk about this e-wallet in Nigeria. The second case is concerning extension platform, and it's in Rwanda. It's been called Irembo Agriculture Window. It's a single portal. It's a single portal for agricultural services with interoperable database. All practice on agricultural operation on input subsidies, not just subsidies, inputs availability and input prices are available within this single portal, and it's been experienced in Rwanda. The case number 3 is in Kenya with this digital platform on rather it's more specific on credits and inputs management, but it is progressively incorporating technical advice within an integrated PPP ecosystem. The case number 4 is what has been developed actually in Benin and concerning cotton and soybean opportunities within digitalization. Actually now, input credit management has been digitalized, traceability within cotton value chain has been developed, and also other monitoring and digital monitoring of conservation agriculture and most widely on agriculture ecology has been developed. This is about the cases, the specific cases for e-governance in agriculture. Now, before concluding our speech, which are the priorities for Africa in accordance with e-governance? First priority is about focusing on institutional architecture. Before developing e-governance, we have to make a clear diagnosis on how it's been organized, the agricultural sector, and then see how to improve the institutional architecture. And it will need national data governance frameworks and interoperability standards. The second priority concerns sustainable financing promotion. You will need like developing or promoting PPP-friendly regulatory frameworks. You will need to focus on digital agriculture innovation funds. They exist and we have to explore them. And we'll also need to focus on like climate and green digital finance. They may be very interesting to provide e-governance startup. The third priority concerns promoting inclusiveness, like integrating gender-sensitive digital design, low-tech channels for rural populations, and multilingual interfaces. And the fourth priority is about what I've spoken earlier, is about integrating it within a regional level with regional economic commissions to make it more easily, more coordinated with less resource needed from countries. Now, to conclude our speech, we'll just make a call for scalable, sustainable, and inclusive e-governance within agricultural sectors. Digital governance is essential to transform agriculture and improve value chains. Sustainable finance and PPPs are central to long-term viability, and countries should adopt regional interoperability and inclusive design. Agriculture then can become a leading sector in Africa's digital public infrastructure agenda. And digital governance is not just a technological choice. It's rather a governance choice, which inclusive and sustainable, which will lead us to inclusive and sustainable development. Okay, I think I'm at the end of my presentation. I will be available for any other questions. And thank you very much for everything. And thank you to EA One Day. Your name is much more complicated than mine. Sorry for that. And it's a pleasure for me to participate to this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being a part of it. Hope I pronounced your name well enough when I introduced you. And then you apologized for your English at the beginning, but there was no need for that. I believe you're really fluent. And thank you for going granular with agriculture. I mean, if ever the concept of digital governance was vague to anyone, I believe with this session you can understand how you can bring it down to the level of implementation in a specific project. For instance, when we had the Premier Africa eGovernance Conference in 2024, one of our sessions addressed agriculture. Amongst other things, there was finance, education, transportation, health, and agriculture is very core to inclusion, to civic engagement, to making digital governance, relevant to the citizens. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your presence here. I'd like to, we'll take questions still at the end of this session. So any questions in the comments from participants, we'll address that shortly. We should be wrapping up the webinar, in 30 minutes or thereabout. We have two speakers who will be going up. Let me quickly introduce the next speaker by the name Dr. Patrick Sukela. Dr. Patrick is the Chief Director, International Corporations and APRM with the Department for Public Service and Administration in South Africa. He's a prominent academic, public administrator, a businessman, and holds a PhD in public affairs from the University of Pretoria in, a PhD in natural resources. Dr. Sukela, you can have the floor. Welcome to the session.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I hope that you can hear me. Everything is sorted.
Yes, we hear you well.
I must apologize. I'm in another meeting. I've just taken a break from the other meeting. I do not have a PowerPoint, but I've got very specific points to make with respect to the subject matter. The first point is just to greet the audience and thank them for giving me the opportunity and for them listening to me. I would like to indicate that the role of strong institutions in the continent is very important because the solutions that we're talking about, especially on the issue of data governance, which is the critical aspect in terms of the innovations and AI and other platforms, all of them need strong institutions because data, if data is the currency, data needs them to be governed. For data to be governed, you need strong institutions because otherwise, if we do not have data ownership as the continent, and if we cannot govern our data, then it means that as the continent, we are not going to have control over developments, over governance initiatives. What that means, therefore, is that we need to put steps to ensure that we have institutions that have got integrity to protect the interest of our citizens. Because at the end of the day, it's about citizens, whether the government in power are able to deliver on the needs of the citizens. Therefore, the proposition or the hypothesis, therefore, is that for us as the continent, in order to realize the aspirations of Agenda 2063, we need those institutions so that our rare minerals I see data as part of the rare mineral that we have in Africa and South Africa especially, because for these platforms to run, they need this data. And what is happening right now is that the platforms that are there, we don't have ownership of those platforms. And our resource in the form of data, which is the driver of these platforms, is generally not in the hands of us as Africans. Therefore, the question of self-reliance as the continent becomes a key feature in terms of e-governance going forward. I think that is the proposition that I would like to make at this webinar. Obviously, these ideas are not new. The principle or the value of self-reliance in Africa is not new, but is the practice of that. Because we're talking about financing. So if we're focusing on self-reliance, we should be focusing less on financing, because financing means that we want to satisfy our needs now, irrespective of the long-term implications, because we then have to call on outsiders to finance our aspirations. So we need to find a way to keep the balance while we are building on our own capacity. How much do we need to reach out to outsiders to support our agenda? And the evidence is that those who provide the finance do not necessarily have the interest of the continent at heart. So their priorities tend to take precedence over the priorities of the continent. I think that's the message that I would like to share. In that context, the African peer review, of which South Africa is a member, offers us the opportunity, the platform in which we can try to practice these things. I'm in a meeting right now of the APRM Steering Committee, where we are looking at ways of self-reliance in terms of the programs of the African peer review, because there is no way that we can realize our aspirations unless we have got a certain degree of autonomy, independence as far as access to the resources are concerned. I think that is the long and short, moderator. That is the message that I presume is not new, but it remains important for the development of the continent. I thank you, moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sukela. That was brief and yet very powerful. I mean, the two key points that you proposed, I totally agree with. I believe Adia had referred to something similar, financing for Africa by Africa. And that is very, very important, because we have our best interests at heart. And when and the financiers of a project, of course, have a very strong power in steering the project. Thank you so much, sir. The other thing about data ownership, data sovereignty, that has been a subject of discussion for us, even at the African e-governance conference initiative. I believe it's going to even be one of our very key sessions at our next conference, which happens to be in South Africa next year. Very important. If we have to steer digital governance, we have to own our data, we have to own those services. Thank you again, Dr. Sekela, for taking out time from your very, important meeting at this time to join us at this webinar, and for the key points that you have shared with us. We really appreciate your presence, and we look forward to having you at other sessions. I know you'll be stepping out soon, so sadly, if anyone has any question for you, we may not be able to take that in this session, but we'll definitely take notes of them and address them the best that we can. Thank you so much. We'll be having another speaker. That's Evelyn Kwateng. Evelyn Kwateng is a digital transformation and policy professional. Our work has focused on digital public infrastructure, shaping public sector innovation across Africa. She currently serves as the Director of Programs and a board member at the Africa Center for Digital Transformation in Ghana. Evelyn, it's a pleasure to have you. I hand the floor over to you.
Thank you very much for this brief introduction. I think that majority of what I would say today has already been shared by the very affable speakers. It's also nice to see some of our partners already on the panel in the person of Hadia. So I will just share 2 slides and speak to it briefly. As I already mentioned, most of the things have already been shared, so not repeating it, so that we can have our speakers, sorry, we can have our audience also ask questions. So what I've gathered from Mr. Wahid, Hadia, the third panelist, sorry, I didn't catch the name, and then Dr. Patrick, is that, yes, that we are digitizing our public sector at an unprecedented stage. If you look around the continent, there is AI strategy or national AI strategy springing up every now and then. There are also lots of Ministry of ICTs coming up with different projects. But what you'd realize is that some of these, the general digital transformation journey on the continent is sometimes uneven, so the maturity level is uneven, but then more so is fragmented, and then the financial aspect of it is very fragile. And then, yeah, I think Mr. Wahid, in his initial statement, mentioned that there should be strong institutions, and also Hadia touched on the fact that we need to have like clear mandate and predicting this the financing aspect of it, you know. And I also want to add that there's research shows that governance failure caused most of digital project breakdown. So not the technology itself, although there's a whole spectrum of what technology, as you were, the last speaker was mentioning, the digital sovereignty part of it. And also the moderator mentioned the fact that who owns the technology, what's the back end, who owns the data, and what do they do with the data. So that's the context. I would just, because as I said, most of these things have been shared, but what I wanted to touch on, which would bring a different twist to our conversation today, was to look at a bit of like the practicality of the fragmentation of the weak governance, right? So here at the center, we say that when we talk of digital transformation, it's less about the technology, but more about the governance, because you can have an impeccable technology, even homegrown technology, right? So we are not even talking about we are not talking about tech that has been imported across the continent. We are talking about homegrown technology. Without proper governance, without proper procedure, without the interoperability of it, then we are going to waste a lot of money. We are going to waste a lot of time. And in the end, our digital transformation journey would be one that is bound with a lot of issues. So yes, I wanted to just touch on this briefly. So yes, starting with Nigeria has like a multi-leveled, multi-identity system, and rightly so. Nigeria is 200 million plus population, right? But let's see. So what are some of the issues? There are different identity systems. We listed a few ones here. And then going to the impact, what does this mean in terms of impact? It means that $1 billion is duplicated. This same $1 billion could go to other aspects of what the digital transformation, other aspect of it, either deploying tech, training citizens, or training the public sector, or just different other things that this 1 billion could go to. And then yes, the operational cost of it is very high, you know, because every sector then, or every industry or every department would have to bring their own ICT team, would have to have their own procedures, would have to have their own regulations, which then make the operational cost for the country very high. And then there's also inconsistent data, because then how sure are we that all those, for instance, who are registered on the passport biometric have the same as the MINC number? Like, so how sure are we that there is consistency across board. The lesson here we can learn is that strong institutional coordination can reduce costs and enable sustenance in financing. The second one is our very own Ghana. Yes, there are some part of the digital transformation in Ghana, I would say, like even in Nigeria, has been interoperable. What I mean is that, for instance, we have the ICOMs, which I would go into it shortly, but notwithstanding, there are quite a number of fragmented e-services. So we have like the Ghana Gov, which is somewhat modeled after the UK Gov platform, and it's great. But then you realize that depending on the office or the department you are going, you would need different data, or you would need to provide essentially the same data that you would have shared somewhere. What it means is that, yes, as I said, in the case of Nigeria, it's also expensive to maintain it because the GRA is maintaining theirs, Lands Commission is maintaining it, the Passport Office is maintaining theirs, different component, depending on the department you go to or the ministry you go to. They all have to come up with maintenance team and essentially also operation cost. And then, yes, there is weak interoperability. So, with fragmentation, one of the evidence of its impact is weak interoperability. So we are going to see it more often. And here the lesson we can pick is unified governance, so that we have one central portal, which so we can have one central portal, which part of it the government oversees, but also not just the government, so that we can mitigate things like maybe state surveillance and all of that. So government can maintain part of it, and then we can also introduce the what we call the private partnership, public-private partnership, where then vendors and then the private sector can also have some component of it, so that in the end, our digital sovereignty as a country, as a continent, is really owned by the different sectors, public and private sectors. Yes, I will quickly zoom into Sierra Leone. And then, yes, there's also the fragmented health information system, where there are a number of, depending on the hospital or the health facility you go, there are different data. So we don't have like one centralized data running across the health sector. And it makes, yes, there is insufficient spending. And then there is also limited national visibility. So depending on the part of Sierra Leone you have different realities, because the digital maturity, depending on as I said, the different region you are is different. It's a bit different, yeah. And then for this, the lesson we learn here is that we have to, different African governments, or in the case of Sierra Leone, would have to then coordinate the governance framework, as has been mentioned by previous speakers, so that depending on the health facility you use, your data is already there to curb some emergencies. I will just, I think it's a lot, but I would want to just skip and then maybe go to the last scenario here, and then we can conclude for the questions to come. Yes, so yes, same with, there's the third scenario, we'll be looking at overlapping mandates, which is very important. In governance, it's important that every component or every facet of the actors or the stakeholders know exactly the role they are playing. So we would have ones that would draft the mandate, would have ones that would validate the mandate, and those that would implement it, those who are accountable for it. But in some cases, we have seen there is this overlapping mandate, which in the public sector then really raises the question of who does what and when. And how sure are we that we are not using the same Naira, Cedi, Kobo to do that same Naira, Cedi, Kobo to do different things that if we had like a bit more centralized team could have happened. So here we have in Nigeria, starting from Nigeria, we have the NCC, and then we have NITDA, and then we have the ministry. When you go through the fine print of the mandates they have, you realize that it's very similar. Right. So here we have conflicting roles in digital policy and regulation. Who is a regulator here? And at what point do we have NCC leading? At what point does NITA come in? At what point is the ministry taking the lead here? And then the impact is that it sends a mixed signals to investors. you know, because as they are coming down to invest, or as they are coming to the country to invest, then who do we go to? If we go to NITDA, would we have to then eventually go to NCC as well? Or once we are at NCC, the different departments and agencies would be covered. And it goes also for Ghana with NITA versus the Ministry Department agency. So for instance, the Ministry of ICT in Ghana has quite a number of agencies under it. And NITA is one of the agencies, but also we have the NCA, which is also a regulatory body. So in terms of procurement, for instance, or even just regulating our, like the different mandates in the country, it's always a conversation of who does what and at what point. Yes. So the impacts is that the fragmentation, and the reason why I'm stressing so much on the fragmentation is that mostly when there are industries or ministries are working in silos, one, it costs us a lot to operationalize all of these, but beyond that, then the digital transformation journey is truncated, because we would always have different maturity level across ministries, across departments, across sectors. I will just end with the last country here, that's Liberia, which also has a similar situation like what I've presented in Ghana and Nigeria. And here also there's always like the confusion of compliance. So if a private sector organization is coming in and they need to be compliant with some government mandatory rules, who do they apply? Who is accountable, or who holds these private sector accountable? And all of these concern really make signals even to the citizens as well, because when we are looking at our digital revolution as a country, which sector are we looking at? Which ministry is in charge? Now, generally, what these scenarios teaches us is one, governance failure would definitely lead to financial waste. So as we are talking about sustainable financial systems and the different frameworks we can use, for instance, like the PPP that has been spoken across board, and without proper governance, we would waste this money. And then the second lesson we learn from here is that the fragmentation undermines sustainability. One thing I wanted to add, which I didn't include whilst I was speaking because it was in the previous slide, was also the political terrain. You cannot talk of a country's digital transformation without bringing the aspect of political will and the political terrain. Now, what fragmentation does is that because in most African countries, there are different electoral cycles, like either 4 years or 8 years. If they are not institutionalized, if the digital transformation is not institutionalized, what happens is that every government would come, when every government comes, they would want to do something different. So we would spend the same dollar, the same CD, the same naira to set up different institutions as compared to the previous government. Whilst if there were some sort of interoperability, then even though the government is changed, we would have had these systems already laid, and then we would be able to save the finances. I would just want to add with the last one that with all that I've presented and with all that our panelists have presented, you realize that digital transformation must be institutional, not just project-based. So it is not one ICT project where we are doing digital IDs, for instance, and another project where, for instance, we are bringing smart tools for agriculture, and another where we are looking at our fintechs. It should be more institutionalized so that every department is looking at their digital transformation, so that collectively the country would look at their digital transformation, not from a very high level point, but one that would have been built from the ground up. Yes. So I would just want to conclude and then allow the conversation to roll. I just wanted to bring in what we are doing as a center, as an independent policy research and advisory. What we are doing is, as I really like what Dr. Patrick mentioned, that developing our own research competences so that the data is coming from us, the insight is coming from the data we produce. Because even when we have donors from outside of the continent donating to us, there's always a caveat, there's always a catch, there's always something we need to do to ensure that we also satisfy the requirement of these donors. So yes, what we are doing as a center is also emerging as a thought leader on digital transformation governance, doing capacity building for citizens, but also for the public sector, for the regulator, so that when we are talking about digital transformation, we all have an idea what this is, and especially when we are talking about governing digital transformation, we know the path and the frameworks we should go. And then yes, one of the things we also do is facilitating dialogues between government, private sector, and civil society. So thank you so much, AfreGov, for inviting us to share this space with the rest of the incredible panelists. I would end here and be open for the questions from the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evelyn, for touching up on those important points and also for making it brief. I see that you prepared an elaborate, discussion, but then you've touched basically on the things that other speakers haven't touched on. Thank you very much. We would now quickly like to go into the questions from the audience. We're looking through the comments from the audience, and it seems okay. Let me ask my question that I've been keeping for so long, and then I would like to direct the question specifically to Mr. Walid, because the question popped up for me while he was speaking. So my question really was that and it came up when you were discussing the financial models. And I wanted to ask, in digital transformation initiatives, who is best to initiate? Is it government? Is it the private sector? Is it the citizens? Like, what works really? Who should initiate for it to be more effective and then just be driven?
Well, thank you so much. Before I answer your question, my dear sister, I would like to thank all the speakers. I have been following closely and enjoying every point made, and I'm sure also our audience today have the same feeling and learned new things. To answer this important question, who should initiate? So we have kind of like, we don't have one player, right? So we have a combination from where these initiatives come from. Most importantly, definitely across our 55 member states in the African Union, we have national strategies. So from these national strategies, there is strategic goals, and then from there, we look at this, and this right now actually is where we're trying to put our focus, is to align national strategies to the regional and continental level strategy, and also the United Nations and the global strategies. So this is one source. The other source, and most probably this one is initiated by government itself. The other source is, as I mentioned in my remarks when I talked about nowadays our citizens, they are using private sector services like banking, like food delivery application, like you name it. So they feel that this can be replicated in government if I can order, or if I can have my bank statement in a few clicks or a few finger tips on my phone, so I can get my birth certificate, I can get my marriage certificates the same way. So this also something that the citizen, through the citizen engagement platforms or social media platforms, they can request to have this kind of like service digitized, because they feel that this is something can be done. And we have also things like the GDIA, the United Nations Index for Digital Government. which is the ranking system for countries. So this also can be a source where a private sector could identify what's the gaps and then kind of like suggest or come with a solution to fill these gaps, because it's a global ranking system. And here there is an opportunity to kind of like compare ourselves or benchmark ourselves against other countries in Africa and globally. And then from there comes a lot of solutions for this like limitation or gaps. So there is no one channel, there is no one player. As I said, it's an ecosystem. It's an ecosystem from government, private sector, financial institutions, innovators, different players can initiate. And this is a good opportunity for me to call for an action that governments also need to kind of like start think as a startup. That's one of the things that we can do in Africa, because as I said, in Africa we have limitation, but across the road we have opportunities. So it's an opportunity for us to kind of like push the government to think like startup, having innovation sandboxes, and from this all a lot of initiatives will come, and it will be a very good initiatives for our citizens.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate. I have another question for Mr. Balarade. But before then, someone in the audience, I think, has a question for Evelyn. Sam Tigani, we're trying to invite you to the studio so you can ask your question live in the studio, but because you haven't put the question in the comments. So would you please accept our invitation so that you can ask your question? Okay, you have typed in the question. So it says, referring to the project of AMRH, it was running through REC's resources were pooled and know-how was shared. I don't understand the question. I don't know if our speakers do. Item Tigani, if you don't mind, you could accept our invitation to join us in the studio and then ask the question live. Okay, so my question to Mr. Balarade was, I mean, in your experience, is he still in the studio, please? Just to be certain before I ask. Okay.
Can you get me?
So, in your experience, what is the reception of the end users? Because I think, just as Dr. Patrick has said, the whole essence of digital governance is for the end users. We're not doing things in silos. All the policies, all the initiatives is to improve citizen engagement and citizen participation in governance, and so that those resources better reach out to them. So, what would you say is the receptiveness of the end users to these initiatives?
I think in agricultural sector, the end users are farmers, and the farmers are really positively appreciating it. Mainly for agricultural extension, with WhatsApp development and with money portfolio management, these are things that are so mainly shared within the farmers that they are even expecting more from us. And there's a real great social demand on some specific e-governance tools. So there's no worry to have about that.
Okay, just a follow-up question on that. Are those initiatives developed alongside the end users? So do they have any input in the specific initiatives that are being developed, or are they simply developed for them and then introduced to them?
Yeah, I think it's the last option. They are developing tools for farmers without integrating them to the process, to the development process. So there are efforts to be made in this sense And I think by 5 to 10 years, final products and final tools may be well adapted to farmers. But in fact, there are efforts to be done.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have Tigari in the studio now to ask this question? Okay, we don't. I have a question for Evelyn. I don't know if we still have her on.
Yes. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
very much. And it's when you were referring to the overlapping mandates and the multiplicity of agencies and where there is no clarity on who is to do what at what time and on board. What do you suggest as the solution to that, that
Thank you.
challenge?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think it even ties into the question you asked, that who initiates? Who initiates these projects? But I think Mr. Walid has done an amazing job with that. So every department and their mandate. So let me use Ghana, the architecture, as an example, right? There is NITA, which is the National Information Technology Authority. Here, so everything around authority should go through him. Should go through NITA. But then we also have NCA, National Communication Authority, right? So here it's always like, okay, at what point are we doing communication? At what point are we doing information technology? But what is interesting is that above all this is the bigger umbrella called the Ministry of Technology, Innovation. No, it's Ministry of Innovation, Technology, and something. They've changed the name, right? So we have a bigger umbrella, and then we have, which is supposed to be like the mother of all regulators, and we have these two regulatory bodies all in the same agency. So my advice would be that each agency can have a clear mandate. So let's say we want to let's talk about the Ghana card, which is the ID, right? It's a project that was, it came from the government, the previous government, to ensure that every Ghanaian has some sort of identity, and even the foreigners or internationals living in Ghana have some sort of identity, and is specifically overseen by the NIA, so the National Identity Authority. Lots of authorities there, but there are some sort of synergies with what they do as NIA and what they do as a Ministry of Communication. So depending on the projects that we have, and talking about digital transformation, I believe that the government can streamline, okay, the ministry itself can have this overarching like supervisory role to ensure that they are like the backstop. So before everything hits the markets, the ministry, because also in the ministry are technical experts there, right? But the different agencies within, I think with every agency's name comes also with a certain mandate, right? So the National Identification Authority would then do our ID cards, but it shouldn't be in silos. So the data they collect, we shouldn't have to also give another data to do our passport, because it's the same biometric. I'm the same person if I'm doing my passport, it's the same person if I'm doing my Ghana card. And I think Ghana is trying to do that. So there isn't one answer as compared to what we should do, because some of these things, when you get into the fine details, it's a little bit complicated with mandates, terms, and then the individual internal regulations. But I believe if the government can step in to streamline a bit of like their processes, so that at every point there are some synergies, not overlapping synergies, so that we can spend the city very well in the end. Yeah, this is what I would say.
Okay, thank you so very much. I was going to wrap up this, but then we have a question from the audience. If we could quickly take that on, it says, it goes to any of the speakers. So from your experience in digital transformation, how effective have change management models been in digital public infrastructure adoption? And goes on to explain that as one of the speakers was presenting, he mentioned digital infrastructure is not about buying new ERPs, but more about governance, which means preparing for people or preparing people for change and aligning them with organizational culture and frameworks? This question is going to the floor. So,
I think in the favor of the time, I think I was the one saying that, but in the favor of the time, this is a very long topic, but definitely one things I would say in just 3 seconds that it has been effective if the stakeholders is engaged at a very, very, very early stages of the initiative, so that they have the ownership, and then they know that the change is coming. They mentally and also operationally expecting that the way the things that they have been doing, the business is going to change, and also it will be very good to align that change management. It's to the kind of like the goals, meaning that will let the stakeholders know that this will going to save their time, give them some time back, also allow them to have very efficient way to do things. So all this from the beginning was very effective to at the end of the delivery of the project have a very high adoption rate. So yes, it is something that we call for it, and it is something that it's a must to do when you are shifting your mindset to become digitally native or digitally in core. So that's very quickly.
Is Maya on the call?
Yeah, and I think Mr. Haitham Al-Tijani also kind of like
asked the question, and I wanted to quickly answer that, but I don't know if the moderator. Okay, all right. Yeah, thank you very much, Haitham, for your question. I realized that you explained it, and rightly so. It can be used. Okay, it's directed to us. Okay, then Mr. Walid, I will just begin and then you can end. Rightly so, it can be used. And in terms of our digital transformation journey, I think the AU's digital transformation strategy is our go-to, is the first place we go to. It's still, I mean, I think it would expire, or the mandate would end in 2030. So we still have roughly 5 years to go. And even as a center, some of the things that we do, we get our mandates from the AU strategy. So when this is implemented well across the continent, you know, this can help our digital transformation journeys, so that we know that when we are looking at what is the future for us, we are looking at this strategy, and then the goals or the pillars that it aligns, we can all align to that. And there we have health in there, we have agriculture, we have trainings. And so most of the things we talked about are actually featured in the AU digital transformation. So thank you very much for bringing that on board. Yeah.
I think I cannot add anything. You have put it very well, and yeah, I agree with you 100%. Yes, thank you very much.
Moderator, can you hear us? You seem to. Okay. Yes, we can't hear you.
I still cannot hear you, my sister. I guess we are running out of time, maybe. we should do the job of thanking everyone listening to us. And I'm not sure if the secretariat is going to join us again.
Please, I think you have the floor to, thank everyone.
Well, I'm going to repeat myself that I really enjoyed all the speakers' remarks and knowledge that shared with us today. I hope everyone in the audience also enjoyed as much as I did or we did. I'm talking about myself. You are more than welcome to add me on LinkedIn, or if you have follow-up questions, or if you just wanted to connect and exchange what we are doing in this space. I would thank everyone for joining us today, thank the speakers, and looking forward to meet everyone again in future events. I'll have to excuse myself, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that. Like I said, we're having a network glitch at the moment, but thank you to all our speakers. It's been an honor sharing this floor with you, and I hope we can connect, outside of this. Thank you to all our participants for staying with us through. I know it's possibly the longest webinar you've been a part of, but like we've seen in the comments, it's been insightful. It's not been a waste of time at all. It's been amazing. And here at Africa eGovernance Conference, we're not just having conversations for conversations. We're having conversations that we want to drive into actions. And we encourage you to connect with us on all our spaces, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, so you stay updated with all our future programs and events that we'll be having coming up. We have a conference coming up early next year in South Africa, and we'll keep you updated on that across all our platforms. Again, thank you so much to all our amazing speakers. We'll definitely be having you again. Thank you for honoring our invitation, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.